It was just another slow afternoon at the corner store. The hum of the overhead lights and the soft clink of cans being shifted around on the shelves filled the quiet space. I was rearranging a stack of boxes when the door swung open. At first, I barely noticed her, just a flash of red as she stormed inside, her face already twisted in frustration. But then the storm hit. I could feel the tension before she even spoke. It wasn't like the usual customers who walked in with a quiet purpose. This girl was different. You could tell she had something brewing in her. She started pacing the aisles, muttering to herself, but the words weren't clear. It was like she was trying to contain herself, but her temper was already halfway out the door. I kept my distance, hoping she would calm down. But no, she didn't. The first thing that set it off was the stack of water bottles. She grabbed one and tossed it aside as if it was nothing but an obstacle. The bottles hit the floor with a thud, some rolling under the shelves, but that wasn't enough. She grabbed another stack, ripped it apart, and let them scatter across the aisle. "Hey, miss," I started, my voice a little shaky, trying to calm the situation. But she wasn't listening. She just snapped at me, her face flushed with anger. "Don't tell me what to do," she shouted, making the air even heavier with tension. I stepped back. This was quickly escalating, and I could feel my stomach tighten. As much as I wanted to intervene, I knew better than to get too close to someone this volatile. The shelves were next. One by one, she slammed into them, making cans and boxes tumble to the floor like a chain reaction. She wasn't even looking at me anymore, just lost in her own world of frustration, as if everything around her had become an enemy. It was chaos, pure and simple. My heart was racing as I watched it all unfold, feeling helpless. But then something shifted. Just as she reached for another display, her foot caught a can, sending her tumbling forward. She crashed into the floor with a loud bang, and for a moment, the room went completely still. It was like the universe had pressed pause on her eruption. I held my breath as I watched her struggle to get up, clearly embarrassed. She managed to stand, her face now a mix of frustration and embarrassment. The anger had drained out of her, replaced by something else, something that looked an awful lot like regret. She glanced around at the mess she'd caused, her eyes widening as the full scope of it hit her. And then she did the last thing I ever expected. Instead of storming off, she sighed, dropping her shoulders in defeat. I'm really sorry," she said, her voice smaller now, almost quiet. It was as if the world had shifted back into place. She bent down, picking up the cans and bottles she'd thrown around, stacking them carefully on the shelves. The anger was gone, replaced by a quiet determination to undo the damage she had done. I stepped forward, my own heart softening at the sight. "I'll help," I said, bending down to join her. And together, we cleaned up the wreckage of her outburst. It wasn't until after the store was put back in order that she looked up at me and offered a small, sheepish smile. "I guess that's what happens when you let your emotions take the wheel," she muttered, almost to herself. "You're not the first," I replied, giving her a knowing look. The girl didn't say anything else. She paid for her items quietly and left, leaving behind only the memory of her outburst and the karma that followed. And as for me, I just smiled, knowing that sometimes a little dose of humility is exactly what someone needs to find their way back.